How do I actually read and understand English chapters? If you don't know about me, then I'm Prateek I got 97% in my 10th board exams and I'm a repeated scholar student. Alright? And I've seen a lot of times that people read English chapters in a wrong way. They try to understand it, but they for some reason are so serious in understanding it that they just cannot get it. And today I'll be telling you how I actually understand it. Just to tell you, I got 99 out of 100 in class 10th boards. Then after that, highest score in English, then second highest score in English, then highest score. So basically, my English is pretty clear. Alright, I can speak English as you can see, and I can understand English chapters and stuff. Of course, my written English is better than my spoken English, but whatever. I'll be teaching you how to exactly understand English chapters, and for that, I have my 12th grade book here. Alright, this book is Flamingo. I don't know why its name is Flamingo, but whatever. Alright, so what many people do is that rather than trying to understand English chapters like they should, like they are actually reading it, they try to understand it for exams, and that's the worst thing that you can do. Alright, the thing is, English is all about learning a language. Now you might think that, oh, that's just cringe or whatever, but that's the truth. English is not a subject, it's a language. And if you try to learn a language by understanding it as a concept of physics or a concept of history, then you will surely understand nothing. Of course, just think about it. You're trying to learn a language here. You're not trying to decode a math problem. You're not trying to remember dates from history. So if you say that you want to learn physics, then okay, it makes sense for you to break down every line and to understand every concept of the chapter. But if you're reading English chapter, then the principle is completely different. The principle is simple. Read the chapter like it's philosophy. Simple. Now you might think that, oh, that's just cringe or whatever. But the thing is that English is a subject of learning. You have to read it and you have to just flow into it. For example, today I read the first chapter, which is the last lesson. Alright, it's a chapter by some guy named Alphonse Daudet. I don't know. Yeah. So the thing is, this guy is like, I don't know who this is, but he wrote this chapter. And in the starting, we are given an introduction or something like, okay, this chapter is about this or that. But what many people do is that they don't even read this. They think that, okay, whatever, that this is just stupid or whatever. But no, introductions are given for a reason. Be it if you're reading a normal book, a literature book, a non-fiction book, or your school book. Introduction is there to introduce you to the chapter. You are entering a new world from a new viewpoint. So of course you need to know what exactly will be going on. For example, in the introduction here, the guy tells us exactly about like how the situation is, like how the Franco-Prussian War is going on and stuff. And if I did not read it, then I wouldn't understand anything about the chapter. But now that I've read it, I understand every point as to what is like going on in the geopolitical system, why they are doing this, what are the characters, and why are they doing specifically these actions. That's the point. Now, second thing is, rather than trying to learn it, rather than trying to obsess over the words and trying to remember every little detail, just first, for the first time, read the chapter like you're reading a book. Of course, you're reading a book, but what many people do is they read the chapter as in they are trying to understand a physics concept. But that's wrong. Just open the book and start reading it. Even if you do not understand half of the words, that's fine. You want to use a dictionary? Use it. If you do not, then leave it. But just read it. And read it as best as you can. Not for exam, but because you genuinely want to know what's going on. Now you might think that, oh, I'm not interested in the chapter in any way. But if you read it, and you do not read it for exam, but you read it for yourself, just for understanding the concept, just for understanding like what the chapter is about and what the characters are, where they go and stuff, you will be interested. I know that. Just try to read it. Alright? If you're not, then just leave it. I'm not forcing you, but I know as you start reading it, not for exam, just think about it this way. Open the book and start reading it. Do not bring in your mind at all as to the exam will have this question or this question. Those things are for later on. First, read the chapter as it is. Now, one thing is, what I personally do is I create theories or conspiracies out of this chapter. Because our brain remembers conspiracies more than facts. That's a basic thing. For example, on one side someone tells you that hey, there's this one hill and it's at this point. You might think that okay, whatever. But then some other guy tells you, hey, there's this one hill and apparently people say a ghost roams that hill and that ghost is a scary looking woman or something. Now of course you'll be more interested in that, right? Because it's conspiracy, because it is kind of dark, it is kind of mysterious. Similarly, if you read chapters like that, then you will understand that hey, I'm getting more interested in it. For example, a line says that the grandmother of the author goes to the temple. Let's just say that, alright? Now, what people do is they try to understand the concept behind it. While that is correct, that is for a later stage. First, what you should do is you should like create theories out of your own self, even if they're far-fetched, even if they're superficial, even if they do not make sense. Just do that. Just because I said so, do that, and you will see the results. The grandmother went to the temple. Maybe she's a ghost. Maybe she doesn't know what exactly is going on. Maybe she is mentally ill. Make random theories. Make absolutely dog shit theories. No matter what. Maybe she's an alien. Maybe that temple is made out of gold. Maybe the world ends after this. Whatever. Create a theory and just start connecting dots. For example, I remember in 10th grade there was this one chapter which was called something like The Book That Saved the Earth. Alright? And I created so many theories out of that chapter that even to this day I remember every detail about it. I know if I would have just normally read the chapter, I would not remember anything, absolutely nothing. But just because I created so many theories, I created so many conspiracies that maybe the king is actually lying, or maybe the minister of the king is trying to overthrow the king. So many theories that I still remember every theory and every part of the chapter. That's why I'll tell you that making conspiracies, making dark theories is so important for your chapters. Because your brain literally loves theories. Now, people are there who love horror stories, right? Imagine on one side you have a random Shakespeare book, on the other side you have a random horror story like, okay, this guy was going there, then he saw a ghost or something, right? Which would you rather prefer? Of course, most people would prefer a horror story or a ghost story, right? And especially when it is scary. So, why not create a scary story out of something random? Like, you know that game where you create random stories out of ordinary things. For example, there's this let's say there's this book kept and I create a theory that okay, this book was actually written by some deep, like, I don't know, philosopher or something, and whatever is written in it comes true. Maybe I create that theory. Now while it is completely like dumb, of course it does not make sense, oh you are stupid, what do you think? But still, your brain will remember it more, right? That's what my point is. Now the third point here. The thing is, when we talk about English or any language or any subject which involves like stories or fiction, our brain remembers it much more if we discuss it with someone. Now you might think that, oh, of course, you're telling that normal like strategy or whatever that people say that, okay, discuss it with a friend, try to explain it to a teacher, whatever, yeah, shut up. The thing is, I'm saying use ChatGPT here. Now you might think that, oh no, that's AI, I'll not use it, but whatever. I'm saying to you to use ChatGPT because if you try to discuss it with your friend or something that, hey, what if this character in this story is actually this, then maybe they might be interested, but after a few minutes they'll think that you are an idiot or something, right? Because we are creating too far-fetched of theories and people do not usually like to listen to them. Of course, if you have a friend who is really interested in that, then that's fine, but I highly recommend you to use ChatGPT or any other AI. Go to ChatGPT, upload a PDF or text file of your story or whatever that your book has, then say, let's create scary theories or let's create conspiracies out of this. And then slowly you start telling it that, hey, what if this is this? What if this is an alien? What if this is not true? What if this is time dilation? Whatever. And it gives you a response like, oh yeah, maybe this is true, maybe this is not. And of course, one thing is that, which is pretty obvious, that you should first tell it that, hey, I'll be creating theories which will be kind of far-fetched so that I can learn it better. So do not point out any logical things, but just go along with it. Just for a bit of experience, right? Of course, ChatGPT will absolutely support you. And if it does, your brain will slowly think that, okay, maybe this theory is actually true. You know, that's what happened with me. Earlier, I created random theories just because I was bored. I got this idea because I was bored by reading chapters because I read the same chapter maybe 20 times in English in 10th grade. So I was so bored that I started creating random theories and I realized how good of a strategy that is, right? Because creating theories is something which your mind loves. And for a chapter, that your mind will remember that chapter like it just read it 5 minutes ago. For any day, for any time. I'll tell you that. Alright? And if you have someone to discuss it with, then that's like 10 times better. Of course. Now, this is exactly how I understand English, how I learn English chapters, and how I still remember them. Right? Now, if you want more advice from me, like how I actually got 97% in my 10th board exams, how I became the 10th board topper, how I repeatedly get high scores in 11th grade, and how I am so good in studying, what memorization technique I use, then you can join the program. It's literally $5 and it will give you a PDF of how to create an exact day-to-day calendar so that you can study for exams and stuff. I highly recommend you to join it. Click the link in the description. I'll see you there. Till then, you can watch other videos. I'll see you later. Till then, work like a dog, live like a lion.